right. Jared, you're back
Hi.
for the first time in 3 years? 4?
You tell me.
It's been 4.
Okay.
Well, 4 in a month.
Oh, shit.
But we're back. Jared's got my cat who's eating his hair. And Jared doesn't even know the topic yet.
I don't.
This is a topic I've really just been I've been ranting about it in normal conversation for weeks. And I'll jump into it. Ego, humility, pride, all of the sorts. As a preface, pride not meaning being proud of yourself or being proud of something in a healthy sense. More so in the extreme variety and excess in pride. And then humility is not victimizing and self-deprecating and that it's in the self-awareness of your own flaws and desire to improve yourself. So that's what I mean in terms of it's kind of the extremes, but I think it's relevant to just simplify to those two terms, pride and humility, and then using ego to describe the self. So with that, first thing is what, from your perspective, level of pride is like necessary and healthy versus like when it's obviously not.
I don't
when
fucking
it's not
know.
okay.
I
Like
don't
just
know.
there's no right or wrong answer to this. I'm only prefacing with this question to like gauge like even your opinion on this.
See, I don't think I've ever had pride. I'm not prideful of anything.
Well, proud of anything?
I'm a work in progress, dude. I got nothing. I'm not the final product.
Well, that's not what pride is. That's not what being proud of yourself is.
Okay.
Like proud of your achievements, right? It's the self acknowledgement that like, hey, I'm doing good without being I'm as good as I can be.
That's not me, dude.
I know it's not.
That's not me.
So when you observe it in other people, what do you feel?
I guess nothing.
You really? Do you even recognize it?
Well, yeah, I see people all the time, and I don't want to name drop, so I won't. But
Okay.
you know, I have friends, and you know them,
Yeah, I know what
who
you
I
mean.
would say are very, very, very prideful.
Yeah.
To like a delusional degree.
Uh-huh.
But I guess I just view that as their current character trait.
Okay.
And I don't know, for me, it's like I've never gone out of my way to be like, hey, man, you're fucking full of yourself. Chill the fuck out.
Yeah.
And so when I see people do it, I guess I don't really think much of it.
Mhm.
I just go like, I don't think that way.
Yeah.
That's really, that's the end of it.
Interesting. I mean, I think with closer relationships, for me, it's different. But in general, I mean, even with closer relationships, I still have this applies. But like the idea of pride being used as like a defense mechanism
Mm-hmm.
against criticism.
Mm-hmm.
And then it goes beyond criticism and it goes into pain. And it goes, well, I can just essentially convince myself that like it doesn't bother me.
Mm-hmm.
And then, or I'm invincible or whatever. It's like, I don't have to think about that right now. I'll just deal with that when the consequence eventually comes. And having this constant habit of resorting to building your pride up taller and taller and taller and taller, only to just, when something shakes it, when something cracks it, when something topples your pride and you get humbled,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the times like people just crash And I like to be optimistic and think usually when people have that experience, then they choose to stop relying so heavily on being prideful to regulate their or to control their mentality or whatever, but like essentially protecting themselves. But that's not always the case, and people can just be chronically in that cycle of just their only existence is to be egotistical or prideful or like whatever you want to call it. But I guess to get more specific, the specific instances of pride being a negative attribute is like being unwilling to reflect on yourself. Essentially, it's the closing yourself off to even.
I mean, every boomer in existence.
Yeah, well, exactly, because you're taught, at least, you're taught in a general sense to, not show weakness, and so the response is to be prideful, to be arrogant, to put up a front, even though that front has no actual foundation, and then that can have so many negative effects and self-destructive effects on yourself long-term and the people around you long-term, because you'll essentially be unwilling to take the fall in any situation. And it's like, even if it's not your fault, you can set your pride down, or even if the thing you're doing isn't bad, the problem arises when it's a completely inconsequential situation and it's not bad for anybody involved. You're just dying on the hill just because you don't want to be wrong. You don't want to be disagreed with. You don't want to lose, quote unquote. And to me, that's when it gets like so out of hand, where it's like you're so diluted at that point to be like, you can't even have a normal interaction in the world without like your pride coming into play and like impacting you.
I might go a little off tangent, or I might have a.
This is why I got notes, so we can steer it back from Jared's tangents.
Okay, not like I might have an incorrect reading here.
Okay, that's fine.
But it's just like for the whole pride thing, it seems more of just something along the lines of when you do call them out for, you could be even something mean like that's not meaningful. Like I think they're perceiving it as like a personal attack in a sense.
Yes, it's the personalization.
And they're like, because then I think you could spiral out of control and then be like, well, I'm not bad at doing this.
Exactly. It's the
I'm not bad at doing this, even if it's like a mistake. I'm not, and you know, I'm not saying the mistake is defining you in this moment, but
the mistakes is a big. That's when I missed. Yeah, when you make a mistake, how prideful you are about it directly impacts your ability to learn from your own mistakes. Because you first have to recognize that you're capable of making mistakes.
Which I think, even for very prideful people, if you were to say that to them, be like, yeah, no, duh. But
because
when it becomes, well, no. Like, I think that's like a very logical thing, unless you're like dealing with a full blown narcissist.
Yeah, true.
But even for like very, very prideful people, I think they would like logically agree, be like, oh yeah, of course people make mistakes. But when it becomes very personal to them, that's when I guess like, you get a little feisty.
I think it's fascinating that we have different levels of like you don't seem bothered by it, and I think it's fine. I'm not so bothered by it that I feel the need to like do anything about it, but it is something I'm passionate to talk about, because I think the way I view it is very self-destructive. And I get frustrated when I observe people doing things that are self-destructive, not in the like behavioral sense, because I think behavioral self-destruction in terms of like bad habits or addictions or coping mechanisms, stuff like that is slightly different. in my opinion, than like the willing thought process to continue to do in the face of someone telling you it's wrong, I guess. Or even in the lack of even being capable of coming to that conclusion yourself through a lack of self-reflection or self-awareness, more specifically, like being so unaware, I guess, to an extent where you just become blind to your own, to be even unable to be like, even in the face of any challenge, it's like, I'm not wrong. Mm-hmm. I can't be wrong, or it's not that bad. And it's like, again, in small increments, it's like all of us exhibit that. But like when it's it permeates, I think the point I'm getting at, the thing I'm fumbling towards is the point is when it goes so unchecked, I think it permeates through even just like tiny inconsequential decisions, or even subconscious decisions of like the way we even view ourselves, to where like if you can never admit that you're wrong or you're capable of doing wrong, then you're gonna have like dire outcome when you're faced with the truth of like, oh, I did something wrong. Your kind of only other option at that point is your two options are to continue to deny it, I guess, if you're really delusional, or you go, oh, I did do that wrong thing, and now I'm going to destroy myself and feel immense guilt to the point of like extreme self-deprecation because I don't know how to deal with this concept of me being capable of doing such wrong. Mm-hmm. But if you were to take the extra, it's like the extra step of, well, let's, in the face of doing something wrong, learn from it and don't do it again. And then it's like, oh, well, then I can try to either avoid doing that or avoid doing it to this extreme extent. Instead of like, I'm not wrong. Mm-hmm. Oh, I was wrong. And now that's earth shattering. And then that could cause harm in some extreme way, or just like a subconscious way. And then people will flip and they'll go like the two coping mechanisms of either building your pride up to ignore it or wallowing down this deep pit of self-deprecation and like self-pity and victimization is like the opposite, but leads you to the same way. Mm-hmm. I just think they're both different reactions to the same thing. And my theory, my current thought process on it is the only mediation between the two is the humility part of taking things with grace of like, I was wrong. I was thinking about that wrong. I don't like the way that I behaved in this situation, so I'm not going to do that anymore. It's like just being objective with yourself without being emotionless, but like, oh, I'm just not going to do that. I don't know. To me, it seems like simple, but like it was a very complicated process for my brain to even get to that point, I guess. But I don't know what your I would consider you a humble person.
I'm all right.
And exactly.
Humble genius, some might say.
Humble genius. So point is, to get there, like what led you to that conclusion, I guess.
Which conclusion?
In your own experience, like what led you
like
to the
seeing
decision?
Prideful people, or
no, to choose the humble route, I guess, because that's.
I think I've just been like that. Just, I said, like growing up, like I said, like, yeah, I've never just been super prideful.
Yeah.
Which I guess that's like kind of bleeding into kind of like confidence, you could say. Because I'd say in general, I I'd probably lack like a general confidence.
Mm-hmm.
But the way I feel like I can circumvent that is by like talking about it, like being confident that I'm not confident. That gives me confidence. And so I think that's a way for it to mellow out.
I
like shoot the shit. Don't take it too serious.
Yes. Well, it's the lack of self-seriousness. But I think the thing I'm aiming at here is, to an extent, like we all have the ups and downs of pride. But like for my personal example, I haven't been a prideful person either in my life. But I do know I can point to many instances of myself becoming complacent through a sense of pride, in the sense of like, oh, that wouldn't happen to me, or oh, I don't have to worry about that issue, that doesn't involve me. And it's like when I'm in a senior in high school, right, and your only perception of the world is school, and now you're at like the top of the food chain for the first time in your life.
Yeah.
And it has this subconscious effect. This is what we were talking about in our previous conversation, where you're just kind of an ass.
Yeah. Well, okay. I thought of something.
Okay.
During my heavy drug usage.
Yes.
I definitely felt like more relatable to like some random tweaker in a parking lot, where I was just like, I kind of get that. So I kind of get that.
Contextualize that for me. And in terms of what? Like
in a judgmental way. Because like, no, when I see like this person tweaking out, I'm like, what a freak.
Oh, like I'm above that.
Yeah.
But now then, you have a different perspective.
Yeah. Like, I feel like I would be more relatable to that homeless tweaker than I would to some other people, for instance.
A perfect life.
Which in general, it's like, I think before I would never think that.
Yeah.
And so I guess I just view, I don't know, I just have like a different viewpoint, I guess, on people publicly tweaking.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's what I mean by the little ways that our pride / lack of perspective. I don't think it makes you a pride person to have ignorance. Ignorance and pride aren't 1-to-1. I think ignorance creates pride, and continued willful ignorance is what creates too much. But I think that's what it is. I don't know that people choose consciously to be overly prideful. I think they just mistake it for power or control over something they can't control.
Well, what I've seen for a lot of people our age, so I'm more referring to people in the friend group.
Yes.
My interpretation is I've seen a lot of very overly confident people, and I'm not going to say this to them.
Yeah.
But I would say I've seen a lot of people that would identify like being confident.
Yes.
Is a good thing in certain scenarios, I guess. But like taken to an extreme where I think people identify being confident as a good thing, and then they just act that way 24/7. And so then you're confident in times you shouldn't be confident.
Yes. And you're prideful in moment. And I think that's where the pride part comes in, is I am now choosing my own ego over the well-being of somebody else. So if you get in a situation where it's like, you could just continue to be an asshole to somebody and hurt their feelings because you don't want to be wrong. Or you could just own up and be like, oh shit, my bad. Like, this is not that big of a deal to me. I'm sorry.
Yeah. But so I guess the example I'm thinking of, I'm not going to name drop.
Yes. I think I know.
Is for like picking up women at like bars or whatever.
Yeah.
Some of the people I know, and they say this all the time, like, oh, just be confident you talk to women, blah, 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 all that shit.
Yeah.
And so it's just, and this is what I mean by, I feel like some of these people, and again, I guess specifically in like pickup game, like they see success in being confident because their main priority is, nutting,
getting the quick fix.
Yeah. Busting that nut.
Yeah.
That's their priority.
Yes.
And so what I'm trying to say is, though, is like, I think their confidence is misplaced and they don't really have anything to be confident. The confidence isn't built on anything. It's like
there's no foundation.
Yeah, there's no, like, they're just being confident to be confident.
Yes.
Because then when you talk to them and get to know them, it's like,
oh, there's a lot of insecurity there.
Yeah, but it's also like they haven't really done much with their life. If you also want to gauge it that way.
Yes, but then they're running from that fact. Like,
well, it's like they're not even thinking about that.
Well, that's what I mean. They're masking this part that's like, I'm unfulfilled or scared of confronting this thing, so I'm just not going to confront it.
Right. And I've talked to one of these people.
Yeah.
And they're definitely getting tugged and pulled, and because like, my belief is I think people should get good at something. And to my like extremist mindset, my junkie mindset, for me, it's like, I think you should get like really
mastery.
Yes. Essentially, I think people should strive for mastery in at least one thing.
Yeah.
And so, and I think that's when, in my opinion, well, I guess I could think of counter argument, but like, yeah, just like, okay, no, I'm still going to go with that.
Yeah.
I won't say mastery. I think striving for mastery is a good thing.
Yes.
But also just being good at something. So for example, like being a good father, not necessarily like
being good in this tangent slightly, but like I'm reading that Aristotle book and it's like, I'm in this section in the beginning of the book that's really talking about like, human flourishing and being a good person.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, what does that even mean? And the conclusion, I haven't gotten all the way to the conclusion of it, but like essentially what it's getting at thus far is like, being good does not mean doing anything in particular. It just means acting in a way that a good person would act.
Right.
And so what you're saying is like, you don't have to be some genius or some crazy artist or anything skillful, because that's just a tool.
Right.
You could just be a good person and thus impact your children in a good way and be a good father.
Right.
And then it's like, that's enough.
Right.
But when you can't even like begin that journey, being good at anything isn't really achievable.
Right.
Unless you have something to move towards, which is, I'm assuming that's kind of the...
Yeah. Well, and so like this person I'm talking about, at least as far as I'm aware when I'm talking, like, they don't seem to be pursuing something like that.
Right.
They're
directionless.
Yeah, they're directionless. And like I said, their current priority is just getting laid repeatedly is their priority.
Yes. Do you think they're going to end up hitting a wall?
I don't know.
I guess maybe less specifically to this person, but in general, like when people are in that loop.
Well, I think that's a scary thing is like,
do you think that's a guarantee?
I don't know if this was in our conversation or conversation out there, but I think you said it, or like learning from your mistakes.
Yes.
Like that's a scary, like some people don't learn from their mistakes.
They can't figure out how.
And it's like, I don't know, like, you know what I mean? It's like,
yeah. One, I think, and way to stay on topic. That's the exact point I think I was making with pride. And I don't know if I fully got that through, but like when it becomes so subconscious, like you're not actively choosing to be a prideful person, you just are a prideful person. You don't really let yourself hit rock bottom in that humility sense of like, oh, I should learn from myself so I don't have to do that again or go through that again. It's mainly like getting up and doing the same shit over and over because you're just trying to get the dopamine or the excitement or the newness or whatever out of that thing repeatedly, instead of like, oh, this thing actually isn't good for me. Like this isn't doing anything for me. And it's actually making things worse in my life. And so instead of being prideful and being like, yeah, but like, because I think it, that means it's true. Yeah, because it's like, I believe that I know better than these million other people telling me otherwise. It's like, same with abusing drugs of any kind, really, alcohol, weed, cigarettes, whatever. It's like, I mean, there's a threshold where it becomes like true dependency, but the point being like, when you're in that scenario, you're in that mindset to even go down that path, at least nowadays, we're told repeatedly, don't do that.
Mm-hmm.
Don't become dependent on drugs. Mm-hmm. And I think the mentality for many people who are younger are like, yes, I agree, but that won't happen to me. Or I have control over it, so it's fine. Or it's not a problem. Or whatever the excuse may be. Coming from this genuine feeling inside you, like, oh, I believe that. But then the more and more times you make mistakes and you get proven wrong, it really just becomes a matter of time of when you kind of throw in the towel and be like, oh, I was wrong. Like, oh, that's not true. I don't have control over this. Like giving up pride in that sense of I'm not right all the time. I don't know everything all the time. And I'm not making the right decisions all the time. And you don't have to beat yourself up and be guilty about it, but you have to be able to recognize when you're wrong and like view it objectively. Like you're describing, if you're going around and just your goal is to just have sex and pleasure from other people, and other people are like, hey, it's cool for you now, but like you're gonna, like in the long term, you're gonna be sad and unfulfilled. And it's like, yeah, but I don't feel that now. So why should I worry about that?
Well, that's the classic saying, like the youth is wasted on the young.
Yes. You can only gain wisdom that way.
And so, that's like one thing, because whenever I do talk to this person, they always do talk about like they want to pursue something. And they've been outright. They're just like, I'm just so lazy.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to.
Yeah.
But they know deep down they should be pursuing something like that's actually meaningful.
Yeah.
And they're not.
Yeah.
And so, as we're saying, like they got some internal system going on, being like, "Hey, we need to change something here," and they're ignoring it.
It's
just
like a
like
short circuit.
Yeah, that was like me with my drug usage, where I was dependent on it for fucking years.
Yeah.
And like that's also why I was doing drugs, was to like try to suppress my conscious brain or whatever, so I could justify making bad decisions.
Yep.
Just being a dumbass. Like that's what I was doing personally.
The justification loop is the scariest part.
Well, because like, but it would be super easy. Like, it's because like I'd be so like I just wouldn't be thinking like, yeah, I'll go do that thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not a big deal. It's not a big deal.
I'm young. Well, and that's to me, that's like been such a thing I've been so heavily in disagreement with, is like this mentality of, well, you're young, you have time to bounce back. You can afford to make these decisions or mistakes.
I don't feel young, bitch.
And yeah, that's the thing, is like, in my opinion, like that just seems like you're making up a reason to have blissful ignorance, or just intentionally like, I know this is wrong and I'm still going to do it because who cares? You can't control me. And it's like, that doesn't change the fact that it's a bad decision or it's going to hurt you. Like,
yeah. Dude, okay. That's why I love what you just said. Like you're talking about like the opportunity cost.
Yeah.
I think I've shown you does Wes Watson sound familiar?
Yes.
Yeah. It's like this dumb roided dude that like sells courses. Yeah. And I just saw this rage compilation of him. And he has like legit roid rage too on top of it.
Oh my God.
And it's just so fucking funny watching him roid rage and just fucking freak out.
Oh no.
And so, but he like, and this is the issue with these people, is like they'll say something truthful and they're like, okay, can I buy my course?
Oh my God.
Where it's just like, I don't know, there's some people don't see past that, I guess.
They're preying on people who lack self-control. That's the problem.
But he said what you just said, essentially. He's like, if you stop doing all the dumb shit you're doing, like that's the life you could be living right now. Yeah. But you don't do that and you keep continuing to live your shitty life.
Yeah.
And then he made himself mad thinking that. And then he's like, shit, fuck. And then he just started freaking out when he said that out loud. And it was just so me. Yeah, and it was just so funny watching him like roid out as he said that.
He's just mad at the concept.
Yeah, he's so mad at that concept. Where he's like, why would you not clean up your life right now? He's like, fuck.
Yeah.
And he started freaking out. It was so funny.
That's how I feel with the concept, the justification loop, and the ignorance to it, and like you eventually get to a point of literal delusion where like you are just telling yourself you like something because you don't want to be wrong.
I told myself, I was like, I'll just become a functioning addict and I'll make it work. And I'm not a functioning addict. Shout out to people who can do. I'm not like, I'm just such a lazy piece of shit.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm not doing anything. Fuck that.
Yeah.
Fuck that.
Literally. That's the thing though, is like, we're so encouraged, it feels like, at least socially, social media mostly, but like social media and like just the sentiment of our peers that are the same age as us is like college years ish. The sentiment of like, you do you, don't let anybody tell you what to. This is hyper individualism to such an extent where it's like it almost becomes like crabs in a bucket, where you've got people who are genuinely making just bad life decisions, and then they're like, "Look at my life; it's so cool and free." And then you have other people, and then essentially they're creating FOMO of like this fantasy life.
We'll see,
like the party goers and such.
And it makes it worse when you have social media.
Yes.
And then they capture that one moment.
Exactly.
And then they plaster it as if that's their life, as like, look at this great thing. And it makes me want to kill myself.
And then,
because I'm like, oh my God, what the fuck am I looking at? This is all bullshit.
Yeah. And then like crabs in a bucket, you're just yanking other people down. And these people who are up here are now getting dragged down to here.
Yeah.
And it's like, they perceive that as going up when really they're going down. And then they're just like set back however many years. And the motivation really is just, well, I want to be accepted by these people. Like, well, I'll do that because like that's like the quote unquote cool thing. Not like that's cheesy as hell to say, but like it's the acceptable thing to do. If I'm in this big friend group, that I'm like, I don't know that if I fully trust them or not, but I'm friends with them, right? And they're like, oh, let's go to this holiday party, and then we go, and it's like, this is fun, and they're like handing out drinks or whatever.
We had fun at Halloween, though.
Well, this is not a real example that I'm giving. What I'm saying is, if this were I'm setting up a hypothetical, and then it's like all of a sudden these people that you kind of trust, but you're mostly just comfortable around, and you care about how they view you, right? And then they ask you, do you want to do this thing? Drugs or dangerous thing 1 or 2 or whatever. And they're like, you want to do this? And it's like, in that moment, I feel like so many people at this age, like, don't have the willpower to just say no. Like, and to, like, not give in to, like, obviously peer pressure, but also, like, even within themselves, like, well, am I just missing out on an opportunity because I'm scared? Or, I mean, what's doing this once going to do to me? That can't really be that big of a deal. Yeah. Whatever the justification is. And it's, to me, the scary part is making exceptions to rules. Yeah. It's like, oh, I've created this boundary for myself. Now I'm going to create an exception to cross that boundary once.
Yeah.
But once you cross the boundary, like, you've now extended the boundary. Like, you're not moving that back. You're not going to do it once and then tell people, I'm not doing that again. I mean, you can if, like, you feel comfortable standing up for yourself and you're confident in yourself, but you don't even get in that situation by being that. So it's like, you're already going down the slippery slope of self-justification. And then you mix that with people with their own decision-making, now excluding the peer pressure or whatever. You mix that habit of justifying bad decisions with inability to see your decisions as bad. And so now you're justifying what you believe are good decisions, whether or not they're good for you. Now you're justifying them. And then you get this like meteor, like unstoppable force of like, well, I have to do that. I need this. I mean, I think it's good for me. And you can't convince me that it's not good for me because I believe it's good for me. So now it is something I need. And I think people will do that with plenty of things, or they'll say it's not that big of a deal. To me, it's like one of the two things. It's like either this is necessary or this isn't a big deal. Stop trying to control me, or just don't worry about it. It's like the two biggest like loops of self-deception, I think, personally, with no foundation, like you were saying. There's no grounds for it. It's just You can become so prideful. You're like, I can do no wrong. I can make no wrong decision.
Yeah.
And if I make a wrong decision, I'm fine. Like, I'll be fine. And then reality hits and it's like, oh shit, like that was bad.
Yeah, well, I think it comes more bad. Like, I'm not necessarily like saying getting laid a bunch when you go out is a bad thing.
Right.
I think the bad thing is you do that for an extended period of time when, like I said, you should be getting good at something, and you spend a substantial amount of time fucking off.
Exactly.
And as you said, that's when that at some point, if you do learn from your mistakes, whether that takes like a month, a year, 10 years.
Yeah.
If at some point you then hit that, you're like, oh, what the fuck have I been doing with my life?
And then you have regret, and it's self-destructive. To me, that's what I view as self-destructive, at least. Like setting yourself up for failure or setting yourself up for regret is self-destructive in my eyes. Like, it's wasting time. It's, oh, I set myself back a couple years for what? So I could say I did this to my children? I don't know. It's not the thing, I guess, to your point. It's not the thing. It's not the specific thing they're doing to distract themselves or whatever, whether it be drugs or sex or wasting your time playing video games all day or just going to some job you hate. Like, it could be anything. It's not to stigmatize all this stuff. It's mainly like the concept of you're just spinning your wheels. You're doing things to do them, not for any other reason than to just do them or to chase something, chase pleasure, or chase dopamine, or resist change or whatever. And when you're not moving in any direction and you're staying still, then in the future you're just setting yourself up for regret, pain, whatever, which can then cascade down into other things, negative impacts, mental health, stuff like that. Yeah. I don't remember exactly how this looped back, but I think that to that point is to recognize like where all this can lead, I guess, like the extent it could go. And it's not that it goes that way every time. It's mainly like you're setting yourself up for a certain level of risk if you choose to not be self-aware. And the key is to just be self-aware. It's just to reflect. Like we talked earlier, like you're like, I've just been reflective. And it's like, sometimes that's all it is. That's all it needs to be, is like recognizing your past actions for what they were and where they put you. And not getting caught up in it, not overthinking it. Like I was saying, like just being a lot more simple and humble in the sense of like, I don't have control over everything. Yeah. And I don't have to control everything. So we talked about pride. And I was actually, you kind of answered the question I said, where it's like, do you think people like that eventually hit a wall? We kind of illustrated the fact that like it could, if they, that's always the end goal or the end game. Yeah. That doesn't mean they're going to hit it, but like, that's always the next step. Yeah. Is to hit the wall and be like, oh, I fucked up. Right. When they choose to hit that is up to them. But the reason I'm bringing that up is because you can't, in my opinion, it's hard to be humble with no life experience, with no reason to teach you to be humble, right? Like no, the example I have here in the notes is, I think I explained this to you before, but the concept of bravery from the book I'm reading is you can't be brave in the face of something you don't fear, because that's not bravery. Right. That's just fearless. So to be brave is to fear the thing and do it anyways. And I think similarly with humility, it's to a similar relationship with being prideful is it's like acting out of selflessness, I think, in the face of a selfish decision. So, laying down the sword in a heated argument just because, like, oh, this is upsetting somebody, or I'm about to make this decision that really only positively impacts myself and would actually bring me more success, but then it destroys these other people or my relationship with these people or whatever. And choosing, like, well, I don't need maximum success. I don't need to be seen as the most successful or whatever. Like, I don't know if my examples are making sense, but point is like, can you just come out the womb humble, or do you have to have an experience that humbles you? I guess is my point. Similar to pride. Do you just come out the womb pride, or is it taught or developed?
I'm kind of conflating, I guess, concepts, because now I'm thinking more wisdom. Okay. And I would say, I definitely think failure would be a better thing, because then you would learn from it.
Exactly.
And so, I don't know, when you then get to the idea of, like, being prideful, I'm sure people are, like, just at first they're probably hardwired, and then however their environment is, like relationship with siblings, no siblings, parents, no parents, whatever the fuck their environment is shaping them up, because, like, they'll be like how do we want to, like, benchmark this? Like, are we saying when they're born to 18, then are we judging them, and then 18 to 30, like how are we gauging this?
I think from born to 18 just shows, like, the way they were raised.
Okay, yeah, so their environment.
Yeah.
And so if we're saying from, like, 18 to 30, whatever age we are, I'm sure people could reasonably affect and change the way they think. That happens all the time.
Yes.
And so I guess, I kind of answer your question. Like, I guess it just depends. But yeah, I'm sure people would naturally be more or less prideful. That just makes sense to me.
Yeah. I think,
like, some people, just some people are going to be more, some people are going to be less. Some people are going to be that, some people are going to be this.
My thoughts on it, from my limited perspective, is they're both taught. So I think you have a base level that is taught to you when you're only being taught something you have no life experience. So as a kid, right? It's like, if you have a humble parent, you're going to pick that up. Like, you're going to know not to brag about stuff and not put other people down and all this stuff, right? That doesn't make you that makes you, like, a kind of a base level humble, whatever you want to call it. But, like, unless you've been put in a situation, in my opinion, unless you've been put in a situation where you actually act upon that humility, it kind of just doesn't count in a more, like, abstract sense. Like, I think the same way about a lot of virtues, I guess, like integrity and stuff. Like, how can I know that you have integrity if your integrity is never tested? That makes sense. Like, not intentionally tested, but, like, you've never been in the situation to actually prove how much integrity you have, right? Or how much respect you have for somebody. You don't really know that until you show it. And same with pride and humility. It's like, you can be a prideful person until you're not. You can be a humble person until you're not, until you choose not to be. And I think that subconscious, like, the way we're taught and the way we're raised, is the baseline from which we build on or below. If you start prideful, you get there for a reason.
Right.
Like, pride, from my perspective, is built over a long, slow period of time. You're, like, building this tower of, like, repeated decisions. And humility is, to me, when those towers fall, do you choose to build them back up or stay low to the ground, down to earth, whatever you want to call it? And whichever one you tend towards, I think describes you. Because I don't think people are entirely prideful and entirely humble and whatever. But so having that concept of the arrogance / over extreme pride, in my opinion, to get to a point of consistency in humility. Like you said, I'm just not a very prideful person. And if anything, you're the opposite, right? Like the opposite being self-deprecation.
I'm definitely, that's me.
Which is also not very positive.
Well, it's like everything, like balance.
100%. Yeah.
And so for a while when I was depressed, the self-deprecation was definitely a bad thing.
Exactly. And I think that's what I mean in these extremes where you're using it as a tool against yourself.
Right. Yeah. Right. But now that I'm in a better headspace, it's like a Marvel movie.
You said the name.
It definitely seems like a more helpful tool than when I was depressed.
Yes.
And so...
And that's why you tend towards being more humble.
I guess, yeah.
But I think...
Dude, that's why, like... Dwayne.
Yes.
Real quick.
Yep.
Approached by pyramid scheme people.
Yep. Some context.
Going back when we were talking about getting laid, it's like they had like a whole bit of like a what's the word?
Pickup line?
Yeah, it's like they had a pickup line for their pyramid scheme. And I sensed it immediately.
Yeah.
Because he walks up to me and he's like, and he says the fucking craziest thing. He like did a little chuckle to himself. He's like, this is crazy, but I just want to sound terrible. But you passed my stupid test. And then I look at him. I'm like, what the fuck did you just say to me? Like, what? The fuck says that? Like, and then that's when I was like, yeah,
that's
he's
slimy.
It was like trying to lure me with compliments.
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck you doing, dude?
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Pick up on it immediately. I think that's kind of what I'm describing, and I still don't know if I've made any sense. But
I'm full crackhead though. You know that.
Yeah.
And so like even if someone's just being nice,
give benefit of the doubt.
Well, I'm just full crackhead. So even if someone's being nice, I'm like, why'd you say that?
No, the skepticism, the opposite, the skepticism.
Yeah, I'm just, you know that I'm fucking. Me and your dad, you're talking about it. Your dad pointed out. Yeah, I'm just fucking
devil's advocate.
I have my tinfoil hat on.
Well, what's fascinating is like, for me, I perceive the pride and self-deprecation as like inversions of each other. So like, they're both towers. It's just one's going up and one's going down.
Both went down.
And then in the middle where they meet is the humility.
Right.
It's the balance between the two. And too much of one leads you right back to the option to be humble or not. And I think that's the whole encompassing thing I've been trying to get at is like, not to demonize pridefulness in such an extreme way and romanticize this idea of humility, but to explain that like we are all capable of all of it all the time.
Right.
It's just you have to choose it. And to choose humility over pride and to choose humility over self-deprecation is not something we want to do if we're already in those positions. If we're already super prideful, we're already super self-deprecating, the last thing we want to do is be humble. And like to get from pride to humility from the top of the tower to the bottom, it's you have to be self-deprecating to a certain extent. And to go from the bottom of self-deprecation, you have to give yourself pride. You have to be proud of yourself to a certain extent. And it's like this up and down graph. And if you can like try to equalize in the middle somewhere where it's like, yeah, I'm proud of who I am and I like who I am, but I could be better. You know, I'm always capable of doing better. Oh, I made a mistake. My bad. That was on me. But like it's gotten to such an extent, from my observation at least, like, to where it's like people can't even do the small little, like, my bad. No, you're right. Oh, this isn't a big deal. I don't know why I'm arguing. It's like you can't even do those little things of like letting go of your own ego because like you've almost convinced yourself that like that's weakness or that's bad or whatever the justification loop is. And then if you start there, it only balloons into bigger and bigger and bigger aspects of your life to where then all of a sudden that's just who you are as a prideful person or a self-defeated person. It's like,
right.
I don't know. I think that was the thesis. The thesis was you can always get there. You just have to let yourself get there. Mm-hmm. And people get in their own way constantly. They
100%.
Like
all the time.
Stopping them, like you were saying, like, oh, well, I feel like I need to do this thing, but I'm lazy. I'm not going to do it.
Yeah. And see, that's what, and when I was doing that, and I think that's what literally made me depressed, is because I kept doing the wrong thing and I fucking knew I was doing the wrong thing. Yeah. And it was literally giving me fucking psychic damage. I was like, oh, yeah.
I've been there.
I got hit by side beam, dude. I was like, oh, my brain. Oh,
dude, for me, it was like this intense lack of fulfillment that stemmed specifically from outletting. And to get meta with it, this podcast specifically was my outlet. And granted, we did it for like 6 months or whatever, but like it wasn't like this massive part of my life, but we did it every week. And I got so used to it. And then after we after we stopped doing the podcast, I would still continue the tendency of my outlet, and I'd just do it in private conversation as I always do anyways. But then like a year after that, I was like, and I kept hitting these cycles of like depression where I was like, oh, like I want to do something, but I don't have the drive to do anything specific. And anytime I try to do something, I would like do it like half-assed. And then I'd be like, I don't really want to do this anymore. And like the drive wasn't there because depression kills your drive, but also like there wasn't a specific thing that I could be proud of. And as simple and as rambly as this podcast is, like there's a level of pride to it that's like, cool, I made something. It's like I have expressed myself publicly, if that makes sense, like outside of my own circle. And hopefully that is entertaining or helpful or whatever to somebody that's not me. And I've pursued that in other ways, like we've done some video. We haven't done a video project in ages, but I've done video projects with like my sister, and it's like, that's fun. That's creative. I'm like expressing myself. I'm showing like, hey, look what I can do kind of thing. Yeah. Without making it my entire life. But it's that balance of like, well, when I had none of that, when I had no pride in what I could do, it actually flipped me on this weird mentality of like, oh, nobody knows me. It's like this isolating, like this mismatch in perception of who I perceive myself to be and who everybody else perceives me to be. And when you're caught in the loop of pride / self-deprecation, the effect is very similar of like, well, I need to prove it to them. I need to prove to these people like that I am whatever, right? Like my perception of myself is real, and I need to validate that through external means. And then you hit for me, I hit a level of realization of I don't need to prove anything to anybody. That's why I keep getting in my own way. That's why I keep not doing stuff, because I'm trying to like present myself in whatever way instead of just doing it. I shouldn't be doing it for other people. I should be doing it for myself. And like coming to that realization is empowering in the sense of like, oh, it really is that simple. Just do it. Not do it stoically, do it passionately and do it like because you want to be doing it. That's the difference. There should be no other reason. But both resulted, like, I'm not a prideful person, but I, like, similar to you, I've been very self-deprecating. Mm-hmm. But it still resulted in the same feeling of like, oh, I have something to prove. And subconsciously or not, that was the feeling. And that was just creating the lack of fulfillment in me, is because I felt like I had some expectation for myself.
Well, I definitely have that.
Right. But like, it was directly impacted by inaction. And then it was this vicious cycle of inaction. It drained me. And then I then had less energy to actually put into doing the thing that would make me feel better. So then I wouldn't do it, which would drain me more. And it's the spiral downward. And then I'm not doing anything. I'm not expressing myself in any way. And for me, I'm a very creatively driven person. And when I don't have an outlet, it bothers me. Mm-hmm. And I didn't realize it. I didn't know that about myself. I just thought I was just like, oh, I guess I'm just depressed all the time. Once I learned that about myself, I could actually be easier on myself. I could be like, oh, I don't need to work. Like, just make something. Like, choose one of your many things you've chosen to learn a skill set in and do something with it.
Yeah.
Because that's how it manifested originally, was just learning skill sets creatively and then doing a thing. Even if I never post it, like just do the action of doing it. I'm like, oh, that feels good. Mm-hmm. Writing or editing something that no one ever is going to see, or recording a podcast, or taking a photo, or whatever. Here's a little quote I have in my notes. I liked writing. I read this earlier today. I was at Barnes & Noble.
I haven't been there in a while.
On my lunch break. I was just vibing to some music, and I was just flow state.
Nice. Dude, there's a couple hot chicks there. That work there.
That work there, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. So this is it touches back on the whole bravery thing. So the bravery thing I quickly mentioned in passing earlier was specifically a quote from the book I'm reading, which is like Aristotle's philosophy. And it says, a really brave person is someone who loves life deeply, fears death powerfully, but faces it boldly when they have some strong, honorable reason to do so. So I was relating that to the consensus is you can't be brave in the face of something you don't fear. And that's what I was saying about humility, is like humility exists as a counter to pride. And so expanding on that, I feel bravery works the same way as humility, and thus leads us down a path of actual confidence and self-love. It's through the acceptance of our ability to do wrong or make wrong decisions that we can truly see our full selves, thus giving us a full picture of who we are capable of being. Mm-hmm. Choosing to be humble and see yourself fully, bad and all, will create a closer relationship with the self. And extreme pride only makes you blind to the reality of your place in the world and the actual impact you have on those around you. And then this big thing at the end is, kill your pride and find out who you truly are capable of being. Stop existing so externally through the lens of everyone around you and peer inwards. Accept what's in there and the power it has to both create and destroy, and do what you can to destroy as little as possible in your life. By doing so, you can actually connect with everything externally so much better and in a more authentic way. There's my philosophy book.
Nice.
That's kind of the culmination of all these like thought processes that we talked about today. Was the entire point is just to accept yourself, really. Mm-hmm. And like the point isn't to make wrong decisions, to not make mistakes. It's when you make mistakes, deal with them properly. Don't bury yourself in like this mountain of pride of like, I can do no wrong, or I do nothing but wrong. Like, you'll just destroy yourself. So there you go. Look at us.
Yeah.
We had some structure this time. for the first time ever.
I also like the free flow.
We can do more free flow, but I really wanted to talk about this.
Yeah. I think we went about it a good way.
Yeah. I never did notes before. Well, maybe I did like some bullet points like years ago, but I'm getting more passionate about my beliefs and a lot less fence sittery.
Dude, I am the fence sitter.
Me too. Believe me, I am too. But I just remember thinking back and it's like, oh, I don't have an opinion on this thing. And now I'm like creating like fully fledged opinions without being like letting those opinions like disrupt my ability to relate to people. But definitely in like finding myself getting a lot more fired up about very specific topics. So, and this was one of them. Thus, I wanted to share and see your perspective on it. So, yeah.
I think I gave you my perspective.
You did.
Okay.
Do you have any thoughts? I don't want to say the word philosophically, but like, in terms of like how you perceive generally on this concept of being prideful or not. like what would you say? I mean, almost going back to the question at the top of this, like what's your opinion, I guess? Even if we use the specific example that you gave earlier of the person you know, like, do you view that as a negative thing?
I view it as you figure it out.
That's fair. That's true. I would agree. But that's not something you would desire for yourself, correct?
What do you mean?
To have that lifestyle?
I feel like you're bordering on like comparison and grass is greener on the other side of that type of.
That's not my intention. I'm trying to see like
for me, like
for you to put yourself in the perspective of that person is ultimately what I'm like aiming towards by saying.
Oh, if I was in that person's shoes, I would just be working with the tools that I have to make a better life. Is what I would do.
Okay, better life.
And so how you execute it will be different because you have different.
I guess
tools.
I'm ultimately saying, would you move out of that situation?
Well,
given the opportunity.
Depends if I can make it work. Because what works for me doesn't necessarily work for other people.
No, but
so if you take me, someone who's more on the self-deprecating side, and then you put me in the shoes of someone who's not, I'm sure someone can make their life work and be good without doing what I do.
Yes, general. I'm not speaking that general. I'm saying you are not in that situation for some reason. You are in a different situation. Yes, given the tools that you have been given in this life, you are not moving towards that situation, presumably for a reason. So my point is.
So now I'm going to do some Dale Gribble shit. Am I moving or am I being pulled?
Oh my God.
I did not do it. It was
You're
done.
Sitting on a fence
I did not do it. It was done through me.
Oh my God. I just want an opinion.
Well,
do you feel my opinion?
What the fuck's the question? What's the question?
The question, like, do you have any closing thoughts on this topic?
No.
Nothing.
I was going to spew some like crazy shit at the end, like Machiavelli, like, yeah, destroy your enemy, only pursue monetary gain, only serve yourself, only serve your self-interest.
See, but you're speaking ironically, which says a lot. That's sarcasm. Yeah. Which means you don't believe those things.
Who knows what I believe in?
You show a lot more than you realize, Jared. All right, well, I guess we'll just end it there.
Alrighty.
Yeah. Well, we're hopefully doing this more.
We're going to be famous. Are we going to be famous?
We're going to be TikTok famous.
We're going to be famous.
I'm going to make a TikTok account, and that's how we're going to blow up. Just kidding. I'm not doing that.
We don't need the Chinese spyware.
Yeah. I'll just
We need American corporations spying on us.
Yeah, Facebook.
Yes.
Instagram.
I want Zuck to spy on me.
Woo!
I don't want Xi Jinping to spy on me. I want Zuck to spy on me.
The lizard man.
Yes.
Okay, well, we used to do a quote from you at the end. You got anything in the chamber?
I'm afraid I might do an old quote.
One you already said?
Okay, here, let me find one real quick.
Oh my gosh.
I think I said it to you earlier. It was a good fucking roast.
It's a roast?
Yeah. It was the Spartan woman. Did I tell you?
Yeah, you did. Oh, yeah. No, that's a good quote.
So it was from Queen Gorgo. And
from where?
From Sparta.
Okay.
And I guess this is Athenian woman asked why only Spartan women rule their men. And then that's when she replied, only Spartan women give birth to men. Which is more of a...
Tell them.
Yeah, well, then it's more of a culture thing because in Athens, they were very like Sharia law. Like women were not allowed to be by themselves outside. They're like, fucking stay inside. You're not allowed to like literally be with any other men besides family member or whoever your spouse is. And the Spartan women were like the opposite. So it's just an interesting difference in culture.
Wow.
And then it's just, queen fucking roasting.
Can't wait to hear your opinions on that one next episode.
Opinions on what?
On women's places.
I got a lot to say. You're
not a fence sitter on that
I got
one?
a lot to say.
All right. I don't remember how I closed it out, but if you have anything to contribute to this conversation, feel free to engage and
leave a comment
in the comments. Exactly, which I think is just on YouTube. I don't think they can engage anywhere else. So
don't forget to like, comment,
subscribe.
The Holy Trinity.
Subscribe to this YouTube channel that has been dead for 4 years.
Rebirth.
I mean, I posted a couple months ago. And in that episode, Jared hasn't listened to it because he doesn't.
I will listen to none of them.
Jared doesn't listen to our podcast.
Nope.
But I was like, I don't know when Jared's coming back. He's busy right now with life. And then
now
the immediate next episode, we're here.
What's up, bitches?
True. And we have a simpler setup, so that's nice. It doesn't take 30 minutes to set up and take down like it did last time.
Next episode will be on peyote. Then we'll start talking.
What is peyote?
I don't know.
Oh.
Something. It's something.
Psychedelics.
It's something.
Yeah.
I think some Native Americans are doing it out in the desert. I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't even know if that's real.
So you're going to make the podcast episode notes next time?
I don't know about that. Like I said, I don't think we need notes. But if you want notes, yes, that's fine.
I like notes specifically for things like I actually want to talk about. But
I'll talk about anything.
Yeah. I'll let you pick something next time. Just tell me ahead of time and I'll do my process.
If I pick.
Yeah, you're likely just going to show up and bring something up.
Probably.
All right. Well, then we'll go back to 1.5 long episodes.
Yes.
This one's bordering on that.
Long form content.
There's some things I got to cut out because of my pets.
No, leave it in. Fuck it.
No, that's terrible pacing.
Oh, come on, it's good.
You don't understand.
It's good. Just fucking raw dog it. It's fine.
I'm just going to upload this raw audio.
Yes. Yes.
Nope. I do this for a living. I am not going to do that to myself. I would cringe. Anyways, well, that's the end. So, awkward goodbye.